All right, it is 7 o'clock here on July 12th, so I will call this council meeting to order. Welcome everyone in attendance here in person and online. For those of y'all who watched the work session, I alluded to the fact that I may not be here because of my other job, but a giant oak tree fell on my truck in my house at the start of this week, and so that kind of waylaid my plans, and so you get to see me today. I will say somebody once told me the greatest life hack that nobody ever tells you about is the benefit of having a quality partner, spouse. And I can attest to that after this last few days. With that said, Ms. McKay, will you do a roll call, please?
Mrs. Amos,
Here.
Mr. Reed,
Here.
Mr. Dwyer,
Here.
Mr. Parrott,
Here.
Mr. Yolen,
Here.
Mr. Hunter,
Here.
Mr. Hardy.
Here.
Thank you. Next will be our invocation. I will start off in the Lord's Prayer. You're welcome to join in if you're so inclined, and then we'll follow it up with Mr. Reed leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, thank you. First item is the adoption of the agenda. Do we have any amendments to the agenda at this time? I'm not hearing any. Do I hear a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
I make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. The next item is declaration of personal interest. Do we have anybody who'd wish to make a declaration of personal interest regarding anything on the agenda tonight? Not hearing any. We will move into public hearings. We've got two public hearings. The first public hearing is for resolution number 2023-0701 to rezone approximately 31 acres from R1 to R2. This is the 300 block of Marywood Farm Road, and it would have been the official zoning map amendment and the comprehensive plan amendment. Do we have anyone signed up to speak, Ms. McKay?
Robert Dillman.
Welcome, Mr. Dillman. Just please state your name and your address, if you will.
Yes, Robert Dillman. My family and I reside at 109 Jesse's Way. I have about 35 years' experience as a systems engineer and program manager, and so I have a real appreciation for specific, quantified information to facilitate good decision-making. And it appears to me, at least from what I've seen, that a lot of the key factors here are not well quantified, not well dedicated to. And of course, the actual housing density has been a statement of intent, I guess, but seemingly not binding. The attendant actual traffic density that will cause, the affordable housing term, just exactly what does that mean in terms of house pricing, as well as perhaps minimum square footage, etc. So without those specific quantified key factors, it seems like a decision can't be well made yet. So I would be a no tonight if I were voting, because that information I think needs to be provided by the developer. I think also the developer needs to provide the specific analytical methods by which they arrive at those answers so that everything is in the open. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I will say that just for everybody's information purposes, there will not be a vote on that issue this evening. We have a discrepancy in having gotten out the notices to the surrounding neighbors, and so we're going to send those notices out, and we will have another public hearing on this issue in 30 days as well. So you'll have another opportunity to voice your concerns as well. That said, do we have anyone else signed up?
David Davino.
And once again, please state your full name and your address, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Yes, my name is David Davino. I and my family reside at 105 Jesse's Way here in Farmville. And I just want to really and I appreciate that there isn't a binding vote tonight. And I appreciate that you're all going to send out another notice so we can have another round of hearing. And hopefully that will also give you all a chance to see what kind of Harper Associates says regarding Rob's concerns and my concerns regarding the specificity of their plan. This is kind of a major development where 31 acres off of Main Street is going to be developed. That's going to be rezoned from R1 to R2, and I'm concerned about how that's going to impact traffic. They did a traffic study, but I would rather have that being more of an independent traffic study, not one that is beholden by Harper's. I don't know what the environmental impact for that area. I know I enjoy the aesthetics of the neighborhood that we have off of Jesse's Way and the surrounding areas. Wonderful, neighborhood, well thought out design construction for that area. At the point where we have really good, see deer and rabbits and all that stuff, and that's always a really fun kind of place to be, and then also kind of echoing what Rob has said here, that we really don't have many specifics. This is a major decision, and we don't know really how the effects to the traffic. We don't know what it would mean for the environmental footprint. Will they commit to how to minimize their environmental footprint in that area? Because if you're going from R1 to R2, that is a higher housing density. And also that's a big range from about that 140 to 310. Can they hammer down specifics? They said they didn't want to go up to 310, but there isn't anything kind of binding. And if you vote yes on this, it kind of gives away a lot of your kind of power to really hone into kind of keeping to them to their commitments. So at this time I would urge no, but thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Davino. Mrs. McKay, do we have anyone else signed up?
No one else has signed up.
Anyone in the audience wish to speak on this matter? Not hearing any, we will close that public hearing. Next public hearing is ordinance 225 to provide a gift of $350,000 to the Farmville Industrial Development Authority to provide loan to entities for economic development in the Main Street corridor. Do we have anyone signed up for that public hearing, Ms. McKay?
No, sir.
Anyone in the audience wish to speak on that issue? Not hearing any, we will close that public hearing for ordinance number 225. Next up is the public comment period. These are non-agenda items. Do you have anyone signed up for public comment period, Ms. McKay?
We have a Dina Cruz to call in. Ms. Cruz, are you there?
Hi, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Can you state your name, please?
Yes, my name is Dina Cruz.
Ms. Cruz, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. Tonight, I and another caller will be sharing some words from people who were formerly imprisoned at the ICA Farmville Detention Facility. We really urge you to listen to those words and to choose not to renew the detention center contract with ICA on September 15th. Here's the first speaker. I'm a person impacted by detention and a survivor of abuse by ICE and ICA. I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress as a result of the abuses at ICA Farmville. They were caused by this terrible place. The nightmares, the panic attacks, the insomnia are all part of the after effects I've had to deal with every day. My family and I have been terribly affected. My children were emotionally affected because of our family separation. My children, like millions of others, are U.S. citizens who have been harmed by detention and those who support these abuses. Those supporters are responsible for the trauma and suffering my children have experienced at their very young age, thanks to the abuse at the Farmville Detention Center inflicts. Sometimes I thought I wouldn't be able to survive. My deepest wish is to watch my children grow up and to accompany them on their path. I say Farmville is a place where people die, families are separated and traumatized. If you all let Farmville keep functioning, you are accomplices to the human rights violations that are carried out here through violence, psychological, nutritional, economic, and sexual violence. I'm one of millions of immigrants who complies with our financial contributions like taxes, which benefit some of you economically, but at the cost of the life and health of people whose rights are violated daily. Because of all this, I beg you, close ICA Farmville for good, and justice for those who have died in the jail at ICA Farmville. The community does not need detention. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cruz. We have a Flor Lopez. Ms. Lopez, are you on the line? Ms. Lopez, are you on the line?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, could you please state your name?
Okay, Flor Lopez.
Thank you, Ms. Lopez. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm also part of the same coalition that Tina Cruz just read a testimony from, and I'm going to go ahead and read a testimony from someone else that has been in the detention center. I came to this country fleeing domestic violence. In my country, the government does nothing to prevent or respond to feminicide or to the violence in the streets. Here, I have faced a different kind of violence, a violence on part of the government. In detention centers, there is no privacy. I lose track of time. They yell at us. The food is terrible and in bad conditions. There is not enough space in the cells. In the winter, it gets really cold, and they do not provide blankets to cover ourselves from the cold. When we get sick, there is no medical care. We are also isolated from our families and loved ones because it is difficult to submit to the treatment they receive when they come to visit us. Many people do not come for fear of being mistreated or unjustly detained. The absence of an immigration status paper should not cause fear and separation in our families. Our physical and mental health suffers in these type of places. The detention center is a business that exists and makes money from the abuse, mistreatment, and suffering of immigrants who are also the essential workers in your community. We are not treated as human beings, and I believe Farmville residents need to be aware of this. We ask for your support so that this detention center in Farmville, where abuse and mistreatment and even deaths have occurred, can be shut down and closed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lopez.
Do we have anyone else signed up for public comment at this time?
No, sir.
Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to make public comment? Yes, ma'am. If you'd like, you can step to the mic and give your full name and your address.
First of all, I apologize for not signing up. My name is Rosalind Gilliam. I reside in Jackson Heights, 611 Monroe Street. And I would just like to commend Public Works, Robin, and all of his staff for the wonderful work they're doing in our area. Our streets look good, the debris is picked up on time, the trash is collected, everything is beautiful, and we appreciate it. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, that's beautiful. Thank you. We always appreciate that. Public Works does a great job. Thank you. We have anyone else who wishes to speak at this time? All right, not hearing any. We will close the public comment period. Next item on the agenda is a presentation by ABM Building Solutions.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, member of Town Council. How are you? Mr. Davis? Do I just advance this? Just go for it? Okay, perfect. Sorry. My name's Chrissy. This is Whit. You've seen us before. We're here tonight to present to you basically our progress report and where we stand in the energy audit and infrastructure improvement program development that we've been working for you on since March of 2023. So what we'll do briefly and quickly for you is give you some details and insight into where we stand to date on the energy audit infrastructure solutions improvement development, give you the timeline and roadmap of where we stand and the next steps moving forward. We'll give you an overall view of what your inventory of your mechanical assets are and the grading of those assets that we have been finding since our start in March. We'll also go over our recommendations and initial findings to this point. And then we'll share with you where we stand to date and then points moving forward that will ultimately culminate into a project developed and built and executed for you. So just to recap on the partnership and where it started and where we stand to date in coming to where we would have a project built for the town of Farmville. We started with a proof of concept back in September of 2022 where we did 3 months, looked through your buildings and showed you what we think we could do based upon a full-scale investment grade audit where we stand today. In March, we initiated that investment grade audit and energy audit to start looking at infrastructure improvements throughout the town of Farmville. We've done several meetings and workshops with your leadership team since then, and today we stand in front of you to deliver progress report where we stand on just the findings, recommendations. And from here, with a couple of workshops to go, we'll start working into building that project based upon what we know, the cost of upgrades, the savings from each upgrade, and build a perfect project that will ultimately provide even more improvements and even better standing for your community. So what we'll have from here is we expect to start leading into Project Builder in Builder workshops in August, sharing with you the results of that, getting your buy-in in September, and starting working into execution and approval in October. And we'd love to start doing our construction as soon as December. You'll notice their first payment from savings is December of next year, because again, you are not asked to pay for anything until a full year after construction is complete. What has been involved in our technical audit process to date is looking through and working with all of your team, including Robin and Bill, and going through all of your facilities listed within your investment grade audit, looking at everything top to bottom from a security measure, from lighting, from comfort, from energy conservation measures, as well as outside the box of just technical solutions that will give you improvements throughout the community buildings. We look and gather at all of your utility information between electric and gas, as well as water as much as possible, to understand what the town of Farmville and the community buildings are spending and consuming amongst those utilities. From there, we understand what facility improvement measures can be made and how to quantify them. And that will relate to how we can build that measurement and verification and show you the results that gives you meaningful impact to energy savings and those improvements that are used to fund some of these upgrades that we're talking about. Whit is going to talk a little bit more about the water meter and AMI side of what we've been developing.
Yes, good evening. Good to be back here again. I just wanted to kind of highlight what we've been doing on the water meter side, working with the team We do recommend that, the town of Farmville entertain, upgrading water meters, implementing an AMI solution. And next step is what we proposed is to do some additional testing on the large meters, because your large meters are the meters that provide the most revenue, and if there's loss of accuracy, then that's loss of revenue there. So that is something that I believe is for you to look at tonight. We do have some additional options, though. We have worked with customers that have said, what, in your expert opinion, could you estimate the accuracy? And we can absolutely do that, and we wouldn't have to proceed with the testing. That is your option tonight. We can take either road. It's how much information do you need to make a decision to move forward on, moving ahead with a project like we're suggesting, which is replacing the water meters that don't meet the accuracy requirements, which would be 99%, and implementing an AMI solution, which you can see the benefits that are on your slide there. It just reduces the operational costs from having to manually read meters, in addition to enhance customer benefits through different portals. And we'll work with Robin and his team doing different workshops and educational sessions to make sure the right technology meter and AMI solution is going to be the right solution for the town of Farmville for the next 30+ years. Do you have any questions about the testing or the different option that I've presented here this evening?
So if you remember from the work session, we would have to amend the current agreement if we want to do the actually testing of the commercial or large meters. And you have that cost in front of you. What WIT is saying now tonight is that if you don't want to do any of that cost, and you're asking what's another way other than looking at our bills, because I shared with you last week, the only data that they have right now is what we gave them from a billing standpoint. So if we have a leak, it's not a true accuracy of what was lost, because when we go to help a customer reduce their bill or look at their bill, we estimate based on the usage for the prior 3 months. And so that's not a true guarantee of what was lost. Now, I gave you the example the other day of a large meter last week of the one that went bad at the hospital. We have no idea how much was actually, which is a probably pretty large consumer of water. We don't have an accurate amount of what we definitely lost. We had to estimate that based on the prior 3 months. What they're saying they would do is put a meter in place to see what that would be. Or he can go into more detail about what the other option is, and that's based on looking at how old the meter is, based on the life of the meter, and they can do, I'm not going to do it justice. Why don't you explain that before we go any further?
Based on the type of meter, the manufacturer, the age, there are degradation tables that the manufacturer has put together. Now, we find that they're not always accurate. That's why we recommend, actually testing. But we can use that information, that the date of the meter was installed, if we know how much water's passed through it, and using those degradation tables, we can have a really close idea as to what the accuracy is. And then we would put that forward as this is what the accuracy is based on these findings. The difference of the two would be, testing tells us exactly what the accuracy is, so there's no guessing. But they're pretty close, and if you're committed to the project and replacing the meters anyway, I could see the case to be had for not spending the money to do the testing and letting us do that another level of analysis just based on the manufacturer's degradation and the age and type of the meter. It's up to you.
Do we have any questions from council?
I've got a question for you. In regards to your system, is there a way, if we were to initiate all this, say, and I'm just using round numbers because I have no clue as to how many gallons of water we produce a day, are you able, say we produce, say, 500,000 gallons of water a day, at the end of that day, can you tell if we used that 500,000 gallons of water, or whether we use 480, or, you know, I'm curious as what we create versus what we end up recording through the meters. Or is there a way to determine that view of what we're producing versus what we're using? And if so, is it a cost savings factor that does not go through the meters that we're losing as well? You know, leaks that are undetectable, you know, minor leaks, I'm sure.
Yeah, every system has non-revenue water, unaccounted for water. There's leaks, there's hydrant flushing, there's all sorts of things that, you know, produce that. It's just normal. But with the system right now, the manually read system has to be compared to the water production records at the plant. With an AMI system, it's real-time information, and based on what technology is actually implemented, you can have it by day, absolutely, to know what water has been metered at every single endpoint by day, and you could have that in real time. And there could even be, you know, flags for high usage. You know, if it goes beyond a trend, so that customer could be flagged, even reached out to. So there's, yeah, a lot of benefits.
That's real time?
Yes, sir.
I believe Ms. Amos made the point the other day, we recently had a pretty major water leak on private property that we had a real hard time finding. If we were to institute your system, would you be able to specify where it's at? Or would you just be able to tell us, give us a red flag, say, hey, you've got 50,000 gallons of water disappearing by the hour, or something to that effect?
There's a lot of options for leak detection, and that's part of the process. Is, you know, we're going to do a series of workshops working with the Public Works team and everybody to kind of educate on the different technologies that are out there. Leak detection is something that can be implemented as part of the solution. It really depends on the type of pipe. You know, is it metallic? Is it, you know, what type of pipe is used to really determine? There's a propagation study that's done. So really next steps in the investor grade audit, we kind of narrow in on the technologies that are preferable to the town, also meet certain requirements based on the water condition, topography, and then we put together propagation studies for the actual how many endpoints and where they need to go, or collectors. And we can also do a propagation study on leak detection to see where, if it could make a difference. I don't know that right now because I don't have all, but there are technologies out there, and that is something we could look at along with the in the workshops to see if it's a viable solution.
But that's what an additional cost?
The leak detection would be additional cost, not for us to look at it, but to see it, to implement it as part of the solution. Yeah. Not all technologies have it. And keep in mind, you know, we don't manufacture technology. We work with all the major meter manufacturers, AMI providers, so we really want to put the right solution for you and not put our products in the town. It's all about developing and designing the right solution. So, you know, the major manufacturers, the major players in the industry, we've got national agreements with. So those are the ones that we work with, Robin, to make sure that they meet their requirements, and we'll meet the overall read rate that we're looking for the town. And is there leak detection options? How viable is that going to be? Because if we do a propagation study and it's determined that the type of the pipe, the location of where your problems are, it may not be economically viable, then you can make that decision if you want to include leak detection or not.
Right. I think that what they're talking about is once all the meters are changed, this is not the next step of doing the testing. Am I correct? You're talking about if we implement everything. You're not talking about just the adding the meters in for the testing. So that's different than kind of what we're talking about. That's like if we implemented the whole thing, not.
Leak detection's
Right.
different. Leak
Right.
detection's different than the meters.
Right, but
and
what
reading the meters.
but
would
the
be-
putting in all the new meters is part of the finished product, not the next step that you guys would like to take of doing more testing, which, you know, the options are, like you said, are one, put in meters yourselves to actually test it, or two, use the data we have and take it from there. Whereas, I mean, I think we have said in the previous meetings that we know we need new meters. They're all old, and we know they have to be replaced, and we know they have to be done. So is there a need to do further testing? I mean, is there really a need to do further testing when the meters we know they need to be replaced.
And that's fair, because we've worked with many communities where that fact is not known. And, more proof is needed to kind of determine that. So again, we'll still provide the degradation estimates based, very based on engineering analysis through degradation tables, but just not actually testing the physical meter. But when we come back to you after we do all this analysis and put together what technologies we recommend, all the costing, all that would be in there. And we may have at that time options. To add leak detection, it's going to cost this much extra. And we could estimate how much you're going to save, but that's really hard to do because we can't predict leaks, right? So it would be an estimate, and you'd have to see the value in that. But it would be an optional add. But the time to do it typically is when you're implementing the full system, because all those technologies work together.
Okay. Quick question. These are no longer manual meters, so you can drive by in a truck. You can get the reading you need on a monthly basis, how much water we've gone through. Is it also, does the technology also allow you to control the flow of the meter? Can you turn off the meters without having to get outside the truck?
They have remote shut-off meters. Not all manufacturers do.
Okay. And with that in mind, obviously we want to know about leaks as quickly as possible. I've been alerted to leaks in my own house by the size of my water bill. They told me about a month into it when the water bill came, well, you've got the toilet's running or something of that nature. Yeah. It seems like the technology is there to be able to, in order to, where did you get the 500,000 gallons? Okay, so we do know there's that this aquifer or the water coming into the town is a certain amount that comes in, and then we distribute a certain amount to all the houses and businesses in town. So there's got to be a point where the water enters the system, and we know there's X amount coming in each day, and X amount being used. So you're talking about surplus, and wondering.
Seeing whether there is or whether we're losing water that's not going through the meters. That was my point.
Okay. Thank you very much for your, explaining it to me. This is all a little bit new. I like what John had to say about if we're going to replace the meters, maybe we don't need this additional study at this time, because we do want to modernize everything in this town. We want to get it as efficient as possible to get the best services we can. So thank you for your time.
Sure, and I don't disagree with that thought, because you all, for what you've just said, understanding there is a need for that. Okay.
Any further questions on the water meter part of the scope? Because we have more, but we can go quickly. So in addition to the water meter and AMI scope development, there's also energy savings and infrastructure improvements on the building side throughout there were 12 buildings listed into the investment grade audit and energy audit that you're doing with your partnership ABM. You'll notice of the 11 buildings shown here, there's one missing, that's the library. There's a reason for that, and it's really because we are doing it from an audit perspective, but for the town of Farmville in a project development perspective, it's its own entity. So we left that off for the sake of the further discussion points. So of the 11 buildings that we just shown, throughout the town of Farmville, that we cataloged and inventoried 48 mechanical assets. So that asset inventory gave us the ability to show you the pie graph that you see here, which is the condition evaluation, which is going to help us give you precise reporting and really a financial planning tool, because we'll be able to tell you what each of the assets that need to be upgraded, and that mostly resides within the 14% of the Ds and the Fs that you see in that pie chart there. They're at or beyond their useful life, and we recommend upgrades of those items in particular. We're going to take some insight from Bill and from Robin on some of the C grading options, but you have a lot of Bs and As, and that just means you have new life, long way to go in a lot of your assets, and it's really, that's a great thing that Bill and Robin have done for your buildings in terms of keeping up a large percentage of what you have throughout your community buildings being in A's and B's. I mean, that's very brag-worthy. You should commend yourself for that. But for the D's and the F's, that's what we're going to focus on, and that's where we can do some financial planning and then even address some of those C's in years to come. that can help with you for capital improvement plans for future years. Now, focusing on the assets that we just mentioned in the slide before, what we
Can I
have-
interrupt you for
Sure,
that?
please.
So what she's saying is all of those that we're getting from this is our facility asset management plan that we've talked about that will fix hopefully the ones that are F and D, maybe some of the C's to make us more efficient. And then it creates a plan for us in the future of knowing what years to structure our financials to do those upgrades in years out.
Perfectly said, exactly. So of those items that we recommend because they are at or beyond their useful life, what they really represent to here is from that asset and grading is these are the improvement measures that we feel will be energy efficiency improvements for you, meaning they will give you a energy reduction as well as a cost reduction from their improvements. But in addition to those, you'll find that we do recommend some other technical solutions and upgrades that will really just modernize your infrastructure, as you just mentioned, give you more reliability within the infrastructure of the community buildings. So just to briefly list them, that will include amongst the 11 buildings we're talking about boiler controls, building automation, wireless controls for your HVAC, so you'll have more wireless remote control and access onto the climate and comfort of your systems, fault detection and diagnostics, heating, ventilation, air conditioning improvements, LED lighting to those buildings that have not yet received them, building envelope, that can be roof, gaps in doors, windows, electric motors and drives, solar, improved controls on your wastewater treatment plant. We are talking about the water meter replacement and AMI, in addition to water conservation measures through sinks and toilets, roof repairs, and variable frequency drives on your blower motors at some of your existing buildings. So to get just quickly into the weeds on some of the energy conservation measures and technical solutions, these are a few pictures that we cited from your wastewater treatment plant, from the hallways of Town Hall, various buildings where we're just showing, while Town Hall has consistent LED lighting, there are some buildings that we like to go ahead and put forth that consistency so that all buildings have LED lighting and give you money and improvements there. So this is just showing where we see current condition, what we recommend to give you equitable LED lighting amongst all buildings, and the impact will be energy and cost savings from doing so, plus better lighting everywhere. What's going to take you through a few?
So just from the building envelope, just think of anything on the outer side of a building, so roofing, facade, insulation, door sweeps, gaskets, some of the pictures there. We've completed our roofing analysis. We're going to be making some recommendations on where we see some need for repairs as well as for replacements at some of your town buildings. We'll be looking at where we can add insulation. These are typically insulation is typically lower cost measure with a good payback because it helps save the energy that's produced within the building. And then wherever we can seal up, like Chrissy mentioned, some of those doors or windows, we're doing that. I'll point out that at the train station, we're looking at where we can get historic grants to assist with that, because wherever we can get grants and rebates, that's money that's just going to help the town. Any questions on building envelope?
Okay.
Water efficiency, not a huge opportunity here. There's a limited number of fixtures, and with the town, not billing that facility, it's hard to say there's an X dollar savings. There would be savings because there's water savings, and there's a cost to produce water. So we're still going to look at it and put it forward in the package for your consideration, because we think it be worth considering if you think the return is going to be worth it for the town. But they would include some low flow fixtures, lower gallon per minute faucets, and things like that. And Chrissy mentioned some of the HVAC upgrades. Where we see the equipment that's at or near the end of its useful life, we're going to make recommendations for replacing that equipment. There's some various pictures here of some different transformers and boilers. But ideally, these things not only can save energy if they're higher efficient, but it's all about having comfort and reliability in the spaces. So where we see equipment that's at the end of its useful life not performing properly, we are going to provide the pricing and recommendations to replace that.
Can I touch on one thing for that?
Yes, sir.
One of the things is we have, like the train station, if you've, I'll use that as an example. One, insulation. Two, you go in there and the heat in the winter is always running, or it's not a steady temperature, or not this building per se, but some of the others, the sports arena, some of the other buildings. We will be able to, when we convert some of these things that can save money, is that we can automatically control that they only are operational during certain times or when they're being rented, and then it's reduced on what it's being heated or cooled on those other times. So right now, other than going in and adjusting a thermostat yourself, but with these capabilities, we're upgrading the ability to reduce our energy costs.
Would you do these changes remotely as far as?
Yeah, under the technology we're proposing, in addition to upgrading the equipment itself, but there we go, the building controls are going to allow the team to be able to manage the equipment remotely through wireless capabilities and enhanced scheduling and different things like that. So yeah, and that's what the slide speaks to right here.
You're right on it. It's perfect. Good. All right. So in addition to the mechanical systems within the building, we're looking at the community as a whole in ways that we can really leverage those energy efficiencies and the cost reductions and the energy consumption reductions, build upon that, and really jetpack you to the next level, and that is in looking at solar. We looked at a couple of sites, locations. I think the leadership team and us have concluded to a couple that we're looking at, and we'll show you a slide in a second. But as an overview, what we're looking at is two options. One would be a client-owned, where you would buy the solar panels. The other one would be a power purchase agreement where you do not purchase them up front, but you work off a program where it's annual. Just reduces the large uptime investment, but we'll review those options with you as we move forward into the project building options. Big things that we want to note and provide you with in terms of the solar and where the financial incentive can be for you to look at solar from this perspective on your buildings and for the community is, with the Inflation Reduction Act being talked about a lot right now, we are navigating that and want to navigate that with you. If solar is going to be something you want to consider, there are some large financial incentives that will be available to you, including up to a 30% direct payback. So we'll navigate that with you as your financial and facilities partner, but we just wanted to highlight that this is part of the fold of the program and one of these financial benefits that you would be able to capitalize on. And the last bullet is you would be able to take additional incentives from a grant funding perspective as well as energy efficiency if we look at EV charging stations for Farm Bill as well. To give you a picture on where we have looked at solar, I think we're spending a lot of time focusing on the water treatment plant and the grounds there. This slide deck can be made available to you, or is available to you if you want to inquire more, if you have any questions of us. But we would love to further pursue evaluating solar as an additional option with this program and for you. If there's any questions, I'm here for it. Otherwise, we'll keep moving. Okay. So in addition to solar, as I mentioned, when you combine solar and EV together, you really are taking off into a new level in terms of energy efficiency and cost incentives for you. We are looking at a few locations, including the farmers market as well as the Main Street Market, right? Plaza, exactly. A few locations where we're looking at revenue enhancement opportunities as well as just community exposure. So we're looking with the leadership team on how feasible and the cost incentives and the revenue enhancement and pickup that you'd be able to gain from having a couple of EV charging locations at your disposal. As we get into Project Builder, we'll share with you more of those details. But again, if you have any questions at this time, please feel free. We are excited to share anything that you'd like to know. Furthermore, one of the exciting pieces that we are exploring with your leadership team for Town of Farmville is parking smarter in the town of Farmville and maybe taking away the infrastructure and hardware of parking meters that you have currently. What now?
So that's good. It's a reoccurring conversation around it.
There you go. Yes, exactly. So much like EV, this is an opportunity for revenue gain for the town of Farmville, but really it's reducing the maintenance for Bill and for Robin and anybody else that is looking at the meters, checking the meter inventory, cataloging the revenue that comes from it, collecting coins. Any kind of management, that's a reduction off of your staff's time. But it also does provide enhancements for you. Much of you seen any of the parking apps that we're seeing a lot these days when you go to Williamsburg or Richmond or other places where it's all very app-based, software-friendly, very easy to log in, remote, be quick and fast-paced with being able to see, tap traction, capture that revenue, be able to monitor, manage, and maintain. All are very easy in interface as well as not cost intense. So we are continuing to navigate those additional scopes, and as we get more details after a couple of workshops and demos with your leadership team, we'll provide some more details to you as well. So as a whole, what we want to make sure that you leave with this and where we are in the further pursuits in the months ahead is giving you improved physical environments, modernized infrastructure, leverage savings as well as revenue enhancements as much as possible from both the water meter part as well as the building energy efficiency and infrastructure improvements. Our biggest thing that we can provide you as your partner in this is giving you firm fixed pricing, not being a manufacturer, but being your true consultant to give you the best solution for you and be able to wrap it around guaranteed results, performance, and savings and revenue where we possibly can based upon the accuracy that we discussed before. And give you the opportunity to show that fiscal stewardship and community stewardship towards some of these bigger innovation opportunities that we're talking about. That is our progress report today. As I mentioned, we have a couple of workshops and demonstrations to go as far as navigating on EV charging stations, water meters, and the parking solutions. Beyond that, our hope is to, and our expectation is to move into project building in August, be able to share with you the findings of that in September, and work towards project finalization in October, and start breaking ground in December. Any questions?
Just a quick question, please. So there's all these different categories. It might be HVAC or water meters, parking meters, all these things. The savings will, in all these cases, cover the cost of the implementing the system and maintaining it. Is that correct?
The savings that we capture provides some, think of it as like a down payment towards a lot of those capital intense projects that would otherwise just be on Farmville to just pay up front. So the savings you capture from the projects and the improvements that we make will cover a lot of ground in a lot of those other, just otherwise capital intense needs. So this will down payment, reduction.
So this isn't like a revenue neutral program over the years. This is something that we'll get a lot of help and aid with the infrastructure and installation of it. But at one point, it's going to become a cost associated with us. Is that right?
We calculate and guarantee any savings or accuracy or revenue enhancements, and you could limit your project to just cover that.
That's true.
Or you could say, well, we think it makes sense to do these additional items, and on their own they may cost, let's just say, $500,000. But if you leverage the project with maybe a grant that we could get or some capital that you have that you could put towards it, the economies could make it where it's only $200,000 that's required to get the whole package. That's what we'll know when we do the project builder workshop and we do that presentation to you. We can show what a budget neutral project would look like. Mm-hmm. We can also show what a recommended project and what financial contributions would be needed.
I've got just one more, if I may, please. Other municipalities in the state, I know that if I recall, you do have some that you're working with. I guess maybe a time frame of how long they have been working with you and how's it going so far as, you know, the cost savings actually offsetting your expenses?
So we have projects that have been under active, we call it measurement verification, because we have a process where we stay with the town for as many years as you'd like us to guarantee the savings. In Virginia, that can be up to 20 years per the legislation. So we've got projects, Virginia Beach Schools, we've been under an active M&V for almost 16 years. We have other projects that are in 3 to 5, but we've got a variety of, and as a company, we've got hundreds of projects that are under a variety ages of measurement verification. And we can provide a whole list to you if you'd like.
Okay, thank you.
So right, all of these on the outset sound great, but the true sort of decision process will come after that project builder workshop. But right now, tonight, we do have a decision to make, and that decision is based around whether or not we agree to an additional fee for the meter testing services, which is about $24,844, correct?
That's correct.
And so, yes, very close, very close. So I guess my question is, given that you said you can get to some approximation, estimation, degradation studies, we're talking about specifics versus estimation. So how are you going to sell me on the 24,000, or how are you going to sell these folks on the 24,000?
I don't want to try and sell you.
I mean, it's here in front of us.
Yeah, it is strictly cost to us, right? You know, there's a certain type of equipment that we have to bring on site to test these 2-inch and above meters. So it's costly equipment. It requires, you know, technical trained people that know how to do it. So it's a pass-through cost. So it's truly something that if you see the value in knowing exactly what the accuracy is for each commercial meter you have in your fleet, then I would say it makes sense to do it. If the argument is we're going to replace them anyway, so we're fine with what your estimations would be based on age, type of meter, manufacturer's degradation tables, then I would say that's a wise decision as well. So I'm impartial to how you go forward with this.
Was your quote earlier that 99% of our meters? Did you say something to the effect of 99% of our meters probably need to be changed?
I was talking about accuracy.
Okay.
Yeah. So if it's reading at 99, and if it's one that you just replaced, we're not going to recommend replacing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But again, and I circle back to the fact of us knowing the need of what we need to change. But to spend the money, I don't know if there's a need to spend the money because the accuracy will be there once we change the meters, correct?
The new meter that goes in the ground will have 100% accuracy.
Okay. Thank you.
Just let me give you an idea of, I mean, the reason of why we're giving you this choice is if you need to make the decisions on factual numbers and you want to have more stronger data, then you pay the money to get them tested. If you're okay with the study on degradation and we're going to do these meters anyway, then okay. I was bringing you something that I thought you wanted, because when we started this, there was some hesitation on whether we should be doing this at all. So to give you less hesitation, I asked them, how do we know the true loss? But if you're okay with that, then we don't need to do that. I would tell you, I just saw where the town manager in the town of Luray posted that they just approved a general obligation bond, which means they're doing it themselves through a company, I'm assuming, for a project of replacing remotely read meters in town, and to have remotely read meters in town, and a new SCADA for the water treatment plant. And that general obligation bond is going to be $855,000. So when you're looking, I'm just telling you, when you're looking at the cost of these meters, It's not just a few hundreds of thousand. It's a big number.
And I understand the fact of that. We talked about it a few years back in reference to asking Mr. Robin to give us a cost on what it would cost to replace the meters ourselves. And as being one of the previous largest water users in the town, I know that the town can replace a meter, and the meter could be bad, and you're still wasting water. So we understand that. But it's just that if we're gonna put new meters in, I think we need to move forward with putting the meters in.
I think I'll circle back to our previous conversation in the work session about the fact of the unknown. There is no guarantee of what we're losing in the way of water. That variable is a guess at best. Whereas if we were to follow through with this, there would be no more guessing. We would know for a fact exactly what's going on.
You'll know what's coming through the meter that you're losing, and you'll know it on a regular basis. If the line that Sally mentioned, Ms. Amos mentioned at to be proper, at the work session, that was an 8-inch line that was ours on private property, but it was ours. We knew it because we had several tanks drained. But to get that leak detection that they're talking about, that's totally separate than the meters. That's got to have a whole different setup, because in talking to Whit recently, because I did share from that work session what your question was, and Whit can explain it better than I can again, but you have to have certain things that's within 100 yards of where that leak may be, and it sends out. Do you want to explain that a little bit as far as
There's
ultrasound?
different technologies out there, but the one we were talking about is it basically listens at night. So when the system is quiet, and you put these sensors in at meter points, not every one. That's why we do a propagation study to determine how frequently, because you want them accessible. But you can also install them at other access points, vaults, if there's other locations, pump stations, I don't know. But it would listen at night and then provide a report in the morning that would say, you've got a leak, and red or green, like big leak or small leak at this approximate location. And then the team could be dispatched to go investigate. It may not, depending on the type of pipe, again, is how closely it's going to give you that coordinate. And it may be, it's giving you a coordinate that's in the middle of Main Street, but the leak is so insignificant, the cost to repair it doesn't make sense, and you'd have to make that decision.
Not at this point, no. It's just a presentation. We have any other questions at this time for the fine folks from ABM? Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
So, referencing one of our public comment speakers at the public hearing, it's just a matter of how much information do you want and how accurate do you want it to be. But we'll come to that shortly. Next item on the agenda is an easy one for the evening. It is the consent agenda. Do we have anybody who wishes to change any of the draft minutes from the work session or last council meeting? Or do I hear a motion to accept the consent agenda?
I make a motion. Go ahead, Mr. Reed.
I make a motion we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Next item on the agenda is the finance report. Mrs. Moore, welcome.
Good evening. You have the June finance report in front of you. For June, we earned a total of $16,450 at VIP, which means we've earned a total of $44,088 since we started investing in VIP. We earned $16,362 in June with our sweep account at Benchmark that I told you about last month. So that means we've earned a total of $32,700 since they started that. And at LGIP, we earned $39,634 in June, which means that Since last August, we've earned $339,520 since we invested LGIP. And so for the month of June, our total earnings was $72,446. Any questions?
Yeah. Do we have any questions for Ms. Moore and her wonderful news? Not hearing any. Thank you, Ms. Moore, for that report, and congratulations once again in a more public forum for your recognition and for the recognition of Finance Department and Mr. Davis and the hard work y'all have done financial reporting. Thank you for that. All right, next item on the agenda is old business. So we come right back to the ABM Building Solutions contract for more data on water usage. I don't know. It's up to council here.
Sounds like Tommy had.
I'm willing to go either way. I think that the 24,000 we could use to put towards the cost as far as to try to, I know it's a small number compared to what the overall cost will be, but I'm not sure that I can justify that cost if we are really seriously considering replacing them to begin with. Why not go ahead and save that 24 to put towards the actual cost to try to offset it? That's just my comment.
We know that at the age of these meters, we got water leaks. We may not know the significance, but it's just got to be, they're there. I agree with Mr. Parrott on that.
So can somebody make a motion?
I'll make
to
a motion that
not to sign the contract?
I make a motion that we do not sign the contract. We pocket our money and put it towards the cost of our meters.
Second.
Motion and second. Any more discussion on this? Not hearing any. Ms. McKay, can we have a roll call vote, please? Remember what you're voting for.
Mr. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer,
Yes.
Mr. Parrott,
Yes.
Mr. Yolen,
Yes.
Mr. Hunter,
Yes.
Mr. Hardy,
Yes.
Mrs. Amos.
Yes.
On unanimous vote, the motion is passed.
All right, so the motion passes. We are not going to make that additional fee amendment to the contract.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
The finance report, can we get that approved?
Oh, yes, thank you for catching that. We heard the finance report from Ms. Moore. Is there a motion to accept the finance report as presented?
I make a motion to accept the finance report as presented.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Ms. McKay. Next item was the resolution for the Marywood Farm rezoning, but we are moving that to next meeting. We will resend notices to the neighbors and have another public hearing at that time. Do we want to bring Mr.?
I was getting ready to say, Mr. Allen
Yeah, Mr.
is
Allen's in
here
here.
to answer questions now that if he needs to go back by next month and give you some other information, I mean, I hate for him not
Absolutely.
to be able
He is
to
here.
answer
Let's-
questions and give you a presentation.
Absolutely. Welcome, Mr. Allen.
Everybody welcoming me tonight. My name is Will Allen. I work with Harper Associates and represent the development group that's working on this project at Marywood Road. And I just wanted to take a brief moment to clarify a few things first to start. And then I'd be glad to take some questions and see if we can clarify any questions that you might have. The goal with this redevelopment, I think, is to achieve a policy objective that is part of what Farmville is looking to do in terms of housing, inventory, and diversity of inventory. And the reason in this particular location that we selected to go with the rezoning is because the lot configurations are larger than what we're seeing as being desirable in the marketplace. And so we thought it might be an opportunity to customize it and make the lots crafted more for the evolving preferences of buyers. So smaller lots and then smaller footprints, right? So when we talk about that, we talk about potential for being a house that has lower maintenance costs, that has modern floor plans, that has convenience to commercial hubs, and that has access to community amenities. And we think there's a market for that in Farmville. We don't think there's a market for that in Farmville for 310 units. I'm not sure the math of how that was arrived at, but somebody shared an article from the Herald that said that that was the potential, that's potentially what could happen here. If it was a flat site in the middle of the Midwest, I don't see how that math works. So I don't know how that number was arrived at. What we've presented is around 100 units, and we have done right now, that's a balance, kind of a 50-50 split between smaller lots, single-family detached homes, and townhomes that would be, 1,400 to maybe 2,000 square feet. And those would be attractive to first-time house buyers. They would also be attractive to professionals, teachers, first-time home buyers, and then downsizers, folks that want to move out of their larger, older home and be in a home that was more modern and didn't need a lot of capital improvements. There was some discussion about at one point, one article mentioned that we might be doing apartments or that would be permitted. R2 does not permit apartments. We couldn't do multi-level stacked. It would have to either be a townhome or a single-family detached product. In addition to that, there were some questions about affordability. These are market rate. These would be market rate. We're not talking about subsidized housing. That's not the program that that this is designed for. There was some concern about traffic and then the utilities, and we did an initial study. We hired an engineer, VHB. They're a multidiscipline engineering firm that has offices in, I think, 13 states. And they used technical standards, the best practices. They're widely govern what they do in terms of looking at the threshold. Is the capacity on the utilities enough for us to take the next step to spend, let's call it $250,000 to $500,000 to then engineer the site, to then confirm that it meets all state, local, and federal guidelines to be developed in accordance with the plan, which would be reviewed and approved. So that I wanted to address those items, and I think those were, and the environmental impacts would also fall under that same category, where our plans, we would be held to the same standard to anybody that's developing in the state of Virginia, in the nation. We would have to follow local, state, and federal guidelines, and that's, so I just want to make that clear. So let me stop and pause there and see if that helps kind of clarify, or if there's any other questions or comments that I can help.
Do we have any additional questions for Mr. Allen at this time?
I think I'm right in understanding that the topography of the land that you're looking to develop limits you to pretty drastically as far as being able to cover most of that land. It's not even feasible because of the lay of the land. So therefore, the bigger number is really not a realistic number as far as that development is concerned.
300 would be a fantasy. But the graphic that's up right now is not the best exhibit. I don't know if we can pivot. It shows the buffering, which is the area that Mr. Brett's referring to, where there's lowlands and some topography. About a third of this site would basically be open space, and the majority of that open space, as you'll see, it runs back to Jesse's Way, which our firm, thanks for the compliment, our firm developed that years ago. And so what we've tried to do is be very sensitive to that buffer on that side, and I can't read it here, I think I've got it in my notes, but I think at a minimum it's 130-some feet, and at some places it's much bigger than that. In this particular example, the land planner, we worked with a land planner to push the townhome portion of the site closest to where we would be transitioning into the commercial, where the rear of the Walmart is. And so we felt like that was a good transition point from a commercial hub to something that was a moderate density, and then to, again, single family lots, but they're just smaller lots than what would be allowed or permitted under the R1 ordinance. So I think the way the ordinance is today for R1, 30 acres, do the math times 4, if everything else worked out with the lot sizes, we'd still be in the 120 range with respect to the overall cumulative total. But again, the reason we're doing this is because the ordinance does not permit the lot sizes, and so that's the important thing to take home.
I'm not an expert on zoning by any means, and I'm not an expert on proffers. And I know that we cannot request of you a proffer. But let me word this in a different way, perhaps. If we rezone this and it allows, I mean, your intent is not to what, maybe 90 to 120 units, maybe more than likely 90 is what you're showing here. But let's say you don't develop and you sold it, and the next person came in and said, hey, I'm going to put in more units. I mean, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's possible. I guess my question is, do you intend to offer a proffer, if that's the correct way to say that, limiting that number of units? Because my understanding is that if you were to sell it, not develop and sold it, that proffer goes forward to the next owner. Is this something you plan to do?
What I would be curious to understand is what's the determining factor in your mind? What would be the limiting factor? Is there a number that you think would be the right number to apply in this application? Or is that up to the marketplace or how the site's, because we discussed how the site's constrained, so there's only a portion of the site that can be developed. So I guess I'm trying to understand where you're going with that comment, like what would be the proffer that you're even looking for with respect to density?
I think you and I talked about this with somebody. I don't think we can ask for a proffer.
I'm not asking.
Right. Right. But I mean, my thing is like he's saying, and I'll touch on that as well. If you guys got approved for this and then you decided that you're not going to do anything with it, and I will say that the apartments that are right next to it that are y'all's, that's still sitting and not anything done with it, and then 10 years down the road, you guys decide you want to sell all of it, somebody could come in by right and just put all townhomes in there, and it would be a ton of townhomes compared to the houses. That's where I'm thinking about the numbers and stuff like that. And it would be, if you sold it, it would be, they could do it by right. So that's where the concern is.
Yeah.
And I think that's where his concern is too.
It is, and what I guess what I'm saying is, the proffer, if you chose to present one, would put a limitation on those units. I know you're thinking 96. I think 96 sounds reasonable. But if somebody had the ability to put on more than that, the proffer might come in handy. I'm just asking if that's something that you intend to do.
Not at this time. We can certainly, let me just say, I totally appreciate the comment with density, and we think that what we presented here is what the market would want to absorb in the 5, call it 10-year horizon. And I'm just making that up to say that's kind of, the next cycle, right? I don't see a plan where it would be all townhomes. I just don't think the market would want that. And I don't see how the overall density based on the way the ordinance reads, how we could go above 140 to 160. I don't see how it's mathematically possible to do that, because we can't do a denser product than what we've shown. So we can give consideration to how we can ameliorate some of those concerns, but I'm not sure if we're in a position where we can proffer to say it has to be no less than this.
So without the zoning ability in R2 to stack apartments, you just don't see logically how that unit number could get above that sort of.
If you take 8,000, the minimum square footage for the lot, and you say that it's 20 developable acres, that's 880,000 square feet. That's 110 units. We can't figure out how you get to this 300 magic, this number that's been thrown out there. And our objective is not to oversupply the market, right? I mean, we're investing $250,000 to $500,000 up front to get this in a position where it can be marketed to actually get to an end buyer. And when you look at something at this scale, it might get to the point where it's got the attention of a production builder that's going to be able to execute and bring a product to the market. When we say affordable, we don't mean Section 8. We mean something that's going to be new, but it's going to be built in a manner that's efficient and as cost-effective as it possibly can be done, so that at the end of the day, it's going to be as economical as you can get for a new build. And so that's kind of the strategy that we're thinking makes the most sense for the marketplace. So I don't know if that helps address the question.
No, thank you. It does.
Do you have a price point? That was one of my thoughts. Is there, I know there's a difference. Affordable homes is defined in so many different ways. Depends on where you are, and the state defines it one way and we define it one way and things like that. But are you talking a price point of the small houses or townhomes being 150 or 200 or 500, or where are your price points estimates? And estimates is fine. I'm not going to say, well, you told me 150. I want to see some $150,000 houses. And I know that's not possible, but not right now anyway.
It depends on the finished living area, but it's going to be, I think to get it below 200,000 may be tough. But I think the 200s is probably reasonable, up to 300s. And the single family detached, I want to say they're like 24 feet wide, but those are one of the best selling products across the country. We work with a couple builders that are national builders, and the products that we're showing here are the ones that are being sold throughout the country, that they have a pipeline, that these are the ones that customers are buying and absorbing in the markets across the United States. So that's kind of how we came up with this layout. To answer your question on the price point, again, I can't say with specificity what it would be. It's not going to be 500. There's not going to be a market for that. It's going to be in the 2s to 3s, and if it's above 3, it's probably going to be a little bit of a challenge to sell it. But if it's a larger size house with more finished square footage, then there may be a market in the low 3s.
And I have several questions, so I'm just going to kind of hit on them, and if anybody has anything they want to add. You said in the next 5 to 10 years. This is on your agenda to develop this. I see it's connected to the other parcel that you guys have that is approved for apartments now. I know all of that's going to affect traffic. And are you planning on developing either one or both of these anytime in the foreseeable future?
So that's a great question. The B3 lot that was rezoned, 5 years ago, became a marketing concern because of the condition with respect to access to getting to it. And recently, I believe all the property in front of it on South Main has also come to the market. And if somebody was to build, I think what could be built on that property with that high visibility and great access, I think there's a real marketing concern that if you can't make a safe turn into that project there, potentially, that that there's just not going to be a builder for the apartments at this point. So we basically scratched that.
Okay.
We don't have a plan for that. We don't have a partner for that. At this point, I don't see a market for it. So we don't have any plans to develop that. But just to be clear, that's not part of the reason.
I understand that. I understand
I
that.
just want
And
to
it's
answer your question as transparently as I could.
right. And I realize that if that was built with this, it would allow a second access point for both. And that is not necessarily a bad thing, but could also be rough because the light at Peary gets pretty squirrely sometimes. And then the access coming on to, not Crestview, Wilson? What's the one beside the motel? Not Peary. On the other, at the stoplight across, at Sheets.
Is that Williams?
Williams.
That was
Williams.
the question I had.
That would be the, because you're going to increase the traffic coming out of both of those places, and there's such a short, I mean, it's pretty tight. And that's not really a question there.
Well, the intersection at Millenwood, I think Taylor McCormick did the traffic, all the engineering for that, and that intersection gets about 20,000 vehicles per day. I don't know what the Walmart gets per day. I would say a lot of that traffic is generated from there. I think there's a lot of traffic in general on Perry. So we're talking about 220 additional trips per day on 20,000 per day. So it's less than a percent.
I would also say, look at some of the other neighborhoods that are already developed. I guarantee you Gillum Drive at Main Street is a very high traffic count as well. Just like this, if you're talking about traffic count, and that's for people that live on Jesse's Way, that live in that whole subdivision that was developed, I guarantee you there's the traffic count that comes out on Gillum Drive compared to any other outlet from that neighborhood, that subdivision, is probably the highest at Gillum Drive and Main Street.
Right, which is something that we had discussed about all of that. That whole stoplight situation is a nightmare anyway. Thank you. Obviously, you've answered my question. My next question is why haven't you guys developed the apartments that were already approved? I know there are.
Was that answered? Did you understand my answer?
I did.
That
Yes.
There's some limiting factors that kind of constrain the marketplace, and so we just don't think it's at this point. It's
Right, I get that. I get that. I know that. All right, so I'm just trying to get through my mind really quick. We would obviously another traffic study would have to be done if the units were increased. If by some chance some other developer, you guys sold it to some other developer, as opposed to the end user being people buying homes, and they decided to come in and put a bunch of townhomes there, they could get a fair chunk more than 140, because in the space that is those 20 some odd townhomes, you multiply that out and it becomes a fair chunk. And
let me just, can I take a moment on that? There was in the memos reference 140 units, and that's intentional because
Right.
the traffic consultant and the utility engineer, they typically will go with a higher number out of the gate, because again, we're talking about initial findings, and they want to be very conservative because they don't want us to go and spend $250,000. I'm making that number up, but a big number, a big investment to do all the engineering work to come back and find that utilities aren't available at the site.
Right.
Or that it's just not going to support even close to that. So there was some confusion, like why does the report reference a number that's not in the exhibit that we're showing? And that's the reason why.
And my one of my things is I know we need some more housing, but it's interesting that if you look at the in-town approved stuff and the adjacent to town approved stuff, there is a lot of stuff that's been approved and nobody's building anything. 140 townhomes next to between Williams and 460. There are a bunch of units over here off of Vincent Street that are approved. There are approvals for others. And that's just my thoughts, and just want everybody to be aware that we have a lot that are approved. And if the market is not allowing for some, why would the market allow for these?
I can't speak to those.
Right, and I understand that. I just wanted to get it out there.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. What I can say is that you cannot market a project like this to a builder until it's been rezoned, because you're talking about such a long time duration before those lots would even be available to sell to a customer. All they can do is give you indicative guidance of what today, in today's world, could be done. And so that's part of the marketing constraint, is until it's rezoned, that you really can't market it to a builder.
Some of those projects who are rental instead of, I mean, that's a different animal.
And that's another good point, David. Just to be clear, so townhomes are come in batches of like three townhomes in a building, 4, 5, 6, up to 8, and that's kind of the typical. And it's not a condominium, but it is a fee simple within a building. And one of the concerns with the ordinance is that it's not, the language in it doesn't really address that nuance with respect to the townhomes. And so that's one thing we've got our eye on, just making sure that the ordinance, the way we move forward, is not going to have a problem with if there is some townhomes, which we think that townhomes would be desirable in the market, just to make sure that we do that in a thoughtful manner that is consistent with the ordinance.
So if I could answer one of your questions, or try to, Mr. Hardy, is the ones on Vernon Street, they're all supposed to be apartments. And I think a lot of that drive slowed down, one, of COVID, two, there was a change at the university. I don't know that they were all for professional housing and things like that. So we haven't had anything sitting idle that I'm aware of that are for buyers, such as single-family homes or townhomes. The things that have been put on home, I will take that back. One townhome project is in the mix. It hasn't broken ground. But they were going to put those towards rental instead of ownership to college students. But I don't know off the top of my head any single-family homes to purchase, or there's no townhomes on the market in the plans that hasn't been developed that we're going to be. It's all been multifamily that's kind of been stale.
Well, now they're not in town technically, but the ones off of William Street is 140 townhomes. Are you saying those were all going to be rentals as well, or? I mean, that's not in town, so that doesn't technically concern us, but it does affect us in a great big way.
I'm talking about in my time here, the last almost 6 years, that hasn't even been on the table to be developed.
Right, and they've been approved for 15 and at least more like 15 to 18 years, and nothing's been done. I mean, that's just my concerns is there is approval for stuff, but it's not.
We own a project a little bit further out the way that's actually technically in the county that's zoned. I want to say it's like 140 units or whatever it is. But when we weren't thinking necessarily that we were going to develop it, but when we bought it, it had the ability to develop it. But as soon as we looked at it, we were like, there's no way to make sense of this. The topo is never going to work out. You're never going to be able to develop these lots and make a profit. So that could be the case with some of these other projects where somebody just said, hey, let's rezone it. They're in the county, and the county didn't scrutinize it, or that maybe it was just a different circumstance. But it may not be that they can build it and make a profit. I will agree with Scott. Over the last couple years, with the way gas prices shot up and some other variables, it has made some folks put pause on projects. So that could be another issue, because people who might be commuting for work, when they're looking at filling up their tank for double, triple the amount they were 4 or 5 years ago, they may not be looking to commute as far, so they may want to be closer to where they're working or going to school.
Hey, Will, in a perfect world, if this gets approved, what kind of timeline do y'all have for this project to be finished?
I think the 5 to 10 year trajectory is probably realistic. It'll take, I would say, every bit of 12 to 18 months to get it to a place where it's ready for lots. I think that's the minimum to get started on construction.
Thank you.
Will, you have in this development 3 different access points. So my question is, one of the access points is south of Millwood Road. Can you show me where that is, where that access, is that going in where the B3 parcel is, right there?
So that's just a representation of how
Yeah.
the parcels could interact with the B3, and that I think it interacts with, maybe there was a conceptual plan. It might interact with the exact location of that road, or it just might be that it's a stub that's shown to go there for future connection. The one to the page left is a point of connection that could be if other parcels in the future were connected. I think those are R1, and then the other access point is Marywood. But today it would be, I mean, as it stands, it would be Marywood.
Okay, thank you.
I've got I sleep better at night after I ask all these questions, so
I love it. Thank you.
bear with me.
It's helpful for clarity. Thank you.
So let's go down the rabbit hole of, we've got this rezone, we want to change our minds and put in all townhouses. No, that's not what you're intending, but I'm just playing through this. Okay. And let's say that that increase in number of units, I guess maybe this is a zoning or a planning question, but we're kind of talking about a specific plan here that might have a little variable in the number of units, but let's say it went up significantly. I'm recalling, I think, from the Planning Commission, not the Planning Commission, our work session, that we just kind of touched on this. I may not be remembering it accurately, but would Harper & Associates have to come back and say, hey, we're changing our numbers now? Is there a safety net there, or once it's rezoned, they can just increase the density? Or would they have to say, okay, we're changing our mind here, we want to go back now? And would that come back before council at that point?
What you're describing is a PUD. This is not it. I mean, the only thing they have to come back for after the rezoning is they have to get a subdivision approval.
I think that's what he's getting at, was we talked about the subdivision last
So they have to have
last week.
they have to have their subdivision plat approved, which would then set out each, so they would remove the lot lines that are currently 3 lots. It would become 1. In essence, it'll all be done. I'm assuming they'll do it this way. All the lines that you see now. If you can you go back 1 or up 1 or however? Nope. 1 more. So you see those yellow lines? The ones on the perimeter would stay. The ones on the inside would disappear and then go back to the one that we were just on. Then the new subdivision plat would look like this, as if what they were going to build. Does that make sense?
Which would have to come to us for approval, or?
Has to go to the planning commission, I believe.
I think it comes straight to council.
I thought it was planning commission and council, but yes, a subdivision would come. But it's gonna be, the subdivision plan is gonna be, it will set out the lots to be approved.
So that will show the subdivision plan will show the number of units. And you'd be looking at either the planning commission and or council will have this number jumps. We can
Legally, can you not approve the subdivision plat? I can't answer that based on numbers increasing. I'll leave that for legal counsel, but you will see it again in a subdivision plat.
And my recollection is this came up at the planning commission meeting on whether or not the subdivision plat would come to planning commission, and they were informed that no, it would go straight to council, is my impression.
Thank you.
We have, we can't vote today. We're not voting on that.
Are there any other questions I can help address?
Will you be here next month as well?
Yes.
All right, so we'll have another opportunity, another round.
Get another crack.
That's right.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience and for wading through all the questions. We'll probably have some more next week or next month. Let's see. Next item on the agenda is the potential adoption of ordinance 225 to provide a gift of $350,000 to Farmville Industrial Development Authority to provide loans to entities for economic development in the Main Street corridor. We had a public hearing on this earlier as well, to which no one spoke. Do we have any motion on the floor?
I'll make a motion that we adopt ordinance number 225 to provide a gift of $350,000 to the Farmville Industrial Development Authority to provide loans to entities for the economic development in the Main Street corridor.
Second.
Motion and second. Do we have any discussion concerning this item? Not hearing any. Ms. McKay, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Dwyer,
Yes.
Mr. Parrott,
Yes.
Mr. Yolen,
Yes.
Mr. Hunter,
Yes.
Mr. Hardy,
Yes.
Mrs. Amos,
Yes.
Mr. Reed.
Yes.
On unanimous vote, the motion is passed.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is Resolution 2023-0702 to enter into a capital lease with bank to purchase vehicles regarding the 4 police cars and the 1 leaf truck. Mr. Davis, do you have any additional items on this?
It's in the budget, so we need the money to buy them. So I would appreciate you allowing me to sign it.
Do I hear a motion on Resolution 2023-0702?
I make a motion we adopt resolution number 2023-0702.
Second.
Motion and second. Do we have any discussion on that resolution at this time? Not hearing any. Ms. McKay, can you do a roll call, please?
Mr. Parrott,
Yes.
Mr. Yolen,
Yes.
Mr. Hunter,
Yes.
Mr. Hardy,
Yes.
Mrs. Amos,
Yes.
Mr. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer.
Yes.
On unanimous vote, the motion is passed.
All right. New toys for Chief and Mr. Atkins. Next item on the agenda is adoption of Resolution 2023-0703, certification from Town Council of not requiring Granite Falls subdivision to connect to the town water and sewer system. This was also brought up at the work session. Do you have any additional information on this, Mr. Davis? It's located off of Fairgrounds Road. There will be 10 to 12 housing units that are located within the town limits. The town's water and sewer ordinance state, if not adequately available, the town council may waive a connection to the town's water and sewer systems. Do I hear a motion on that resolution?
I make a motion, we adopt resolution number 2023-0703, certification from town council of not requiring Granite Falls subdivision to connect to the town water and sewer systems.
Second.
Motion and second. Do we have any discussion regarding that resolution?
I just have one question. If they decide later on that they want to connect, we have to come back and approve it?
We would have to, we would probably, we would have to get an easement for one of them because it has to go across someone else's property in order to get water there. Sewer, we would have to get permission from VDOT to go down Fairgrounds Road to run it. But it's very unlikely that that's going to happen once they're on well and septic, unless the other land is developed. And there's a closer point that they could connect to water and sewer, then they potentially could, yes.
Yeah, that's what I was speaking of, just in case the other land gets
This is
developed.
just to waive it now and not make it a requirement so that they can build them.
Okay.
Any other discussions or questions? Not hearing any. Ms. McKay, can you do a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Yolen,
Yes.
Mr. Hunter,
Yes.
Mr. Hardy,
Yes.
Mrs. Amos,
Yes.
Mr. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Dwyer,
Yes.
Mr. Parrott.
Yes.
On unanimous vote, the motion is passed.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the town manager's report. What do you got, Mr. Davis?
I don't have anything today.
What? Wow! Look at that. Well, in this case, we'll start town council closing comments if anybody has any. I'll start with you, Ms. Amos.
No, I'm good.
Mr. Reed?
Yes, I just want to announce that the Virginia Municipal League is going to have one of their regional suppers here in Farmville if during the fall, and I will give you the date, and they will be covering the cost, and Longwood has offered us a billing to have this event in, so I will get with everybody. Hope everybody will attend.
Excellent. Mr. Dwyer?
Not a thing, Mayor.
Mr. Parrott?
I'm good.
Mr. Yolen?
Quick thank you very much for participating today, the folks from Jesse's Way and the folks who called in regarding the ICA detention facility. We really appreciate your participation. Thank you.
Mr. Hunter?
Yes, I have one thing. National Night Out is coming up, correct, Chief? Parkview Gardens is doing theirs on August the 4th. Again, that's the first Friday in August. So if you can make it over there, we greatly appreciate it.
Excellent. Mr. Hardy?
I just wanted to bring up again a big thank you for, I know we talked about it last week in work session, a big thank you on the whole downtown for the 4th of July thing. We had a blast. We absolutely had a blast. And thanks to everybody, the Public Works folks, Jackie, the town manager, everybody. It was well done. And I'm sorry, and Andy as well. I know, I'm sorry. But it was great. I just wanted to mention that again here because it was a little more crowd here and make sure more people heard that.
Thank you. And I'll echo those sentiments. It was a fun evening downtown and greatly appreciate all the work that was put in, all the folks who poured their hard work into it and everybody who had to work that evening. And thank you, Mrs. Vaughn, for all your efforts helping to organize as well. I heard a lot of appreciative comments about the ability for fellowship in downtown Farmville. A lot of people appreciated that. That said, quick roundup. I do this every meeting, the mayor's meetings and goings. I attended the train station's 120th birthday last month, which was great. There was lots of old photos and videos of the old Pepsi commercial. It was pretty cool to witness. Then I ran the night train 50K. That's 31 miles, the length of the High Bridge Trail. I would not recommend doing that during the summer. Wait till the fall. It's a little steamy. Then I got a chance to celebrate Miss Isabel Johnson's 100th birthday at Centra Pace, which was a real hoot. Her proclamation designated her as a snazzy dresser and a good singer, and I can attest that she is in fact a snazzy dresser. I asked her about her secret to longevity and the fact that she was still surrounded by so much of her loving family. And she said, just trust in the Lord, young man, just trust in the Lord. So I greatly appreciated that. And last but not least, I had a meeting with Justin Pope, VP of Longwood, concerning a potential event application they're debating putting in. They were asking for some town assistance. I asked Scott if he and Julie would run Miss Moore would run some numbers. Mr. Davis and Miss Moore ran the numbers on what a busy week of full lodging occupancy and increased business to restaurants would look like, so that if the occasion does come that we bring that issue to council, we'll have some numbers for you as far as like a request to invest in an event. and whether or not it would make sense for us. But if that were to come up, it would be August 2nd, so we'll see if that arises. That said, that's just the comings and goings. I appreciate everybody who reached out after the tree crushed my beautiful truck that I love deeply and took out my house. I really enjoyed all the support. I will say that it's an exciting time in Farmville. I really appreciate this council's willingness to make moves to invest in downtown Farmville. I think it's a monumental thing, and I look forward to the fruits that come from that movement. And so I want to salute you for your willingness to invest in our downtown. I think that you should be commended for that. Regarding housing, I think we're going to continue to see these issues of zoning. Zoning is always a tough issue. It involves people's homes, so it's always going to engender some passion and a lot of thought. And so take that seriously. That is our job up here. But I think that we will continue to see this issue come up in our community as people continue to say we don't have diverse housing, is what I'll say, because affordable does come with so many connotations. But I appreciate your diligence tonight and the questions that you asked. So thank you all. That said, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I got one question first.
Yes, sir.
If the event comes to fruition with Longwood, August 2nd is the first Wednesday.
That would be a work session. It would just be, if it was going to come up, it would be come to you guys on August 2nd for like decision process. Basically, they're looking at, there's no home for the Big South tournament for the next 2 years.
Okay. Cool. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn, I shall make.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you all.